Hey, this meeting is being recorded and will be shared with you afterwards. My name is Paula Fries, and I serve as one of the secretariats with the National Association of County Administrators, otherwise known as NACA. NACA's mission is to support county executives and administrators with practical tools, peer learning, and insights to strengthen county governance. Today's session is about fiscal stewardship and infrastructure modernization, how counties can thrive through uncertainty, presented by our friend of NACA, OPTERRA Energy Services. OPTERRA is previously known as NG, who has also been a friend of NACA. OPTERRA is an LS Power company. Their team has been working with public serving organizations for over 50 years now. OPTERRA partners with public institutions to build safer, healthier, and more resilient communities through efficient facilities and infrastructure. Today's speakers include Kelly Ferguson. She is a Senior Program Development Manager at OPTERRA. She's responsible for coordination, supervision, and overall financial management of local government projects. Prior to her clean energy work, she spent 15 years as an independent consulting civil engineer, specializing in linear utility capital asset management and mapping. In parallel with her professional career, Kelly served 16 years as a volunteer public servant, including 8 years as an elected official of the Milano Park City Council and one term as mayor. Kelly holds
Menlo Park.
thank
City
you.
of Menlo Park. Venture
Kelly
capital,
holds,
capital of the world.
oh, that's a good trivia questions at the end of the webinar today. Kelly holds 3 degrees from Stanford, including a master's and PhD in civil engineering. We also hope that Anthony Taufik, oh, go ahead, Kelly.
Tav, Anthony
Thank
Tav.
you. Director of General Services in Solano County, California, will be joining us. He's currently in a meeting right now, so ultimately that meeting will determine his attendance at today's webinar. But Kelly is prepared to talk about any of the issues that he was going to talk about in Solano County. Anthony oversees the General Services Department, providing essential support services to all county departments in the areas of capital projects, management, fleet services, facilities operation, purchasing, energy utilities, and real estate services. Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. We're going to start with a presentation and then move into Q&A at the end of the hour. This session will be recorded. We will share a link afterwards. Use the chat to submit your questions at any time. We'll gather them for discussion toward the end. Finally, please stay on mute while the speakers are talking. We will ask for you to unmute if we would like you to ask your questions later. With all that, let's get started. Kelly, I'll turn
Great.
it over to you.
Oh, Paula, thank you so much. And I'm grateful for NACA kind of highlighting this topic because it's something that so many counties are facing. And, addressing these issues are just critical to the well-being and the future of these counties. So we're going to have, back to the previous slide, we're going to have this presentation. In the previous slide, we have we're going to talk, first of all, a little bit about the challenges that are facing counties, and probably all of you could speak to this aspect as eloquently. And then we'll talk about what is an approach to addressing these issues in comprehensive infrastructure modernization, and then talk particularly about the Solano County case and what their problems were and how they addressed it, and where they are today. And then we'll follow that with Q&A. So save up some good questions for me. So, and again, Anthony he's in California. Most of the counties meet on Tuesday mornings. So unfortunately, he's on deck in the Board of Supervisors chambers, ready to give a presentation, but he knows that if he can join us at 11:30 or 2:30, depending on what time you are in the country, he's going to try and join. Okay, so let's move ahead then. So what are the major challenges that counties are facing? And certainly funding that's coming down from the federal government and the state government is a source of great uncertainty. So that's like and people don't have enough money. So that's a need. You also have aging infrastructure and issues of compliance and a need for resiliency. Um, these critical facilities need to keep operating even when the power grid is down. And then we have increasing operating costs, or really even increasing operating and capital costs in all aspects of our physical infrastructure. So let's delve into these. Um, so funding cuts, we all know about these, as so much county funding does come down from states and federal, but we're facing Medicare cuts, public safety cuts, community block grant cuts, and the list, you could expand on this list. But, at the same time, over on the right, these ICMA statistics are telling us that 85% of counties are reporting an increase in service demand. So you're being asked to do more, even in this uncertain environment. And uh, 86% of counties are citing insufficient funding to do the critical and workforce shortages as barriers to getting things done. So you're short-staffed, you have an increased workload, and insufficient funding. Isn't that great? Um, uh, and also, a declining revenue growth environment. So sales tax, property tax, traditional places where counties get revenues are flat or uncertain, and kind of that's the funding landscape. Next slide. At the same time, you have these challenges of aging infrastructure. A lot of county buildings are 50, 70, even 100 years old, and they're aging infrastructure. That's the polite term. A lot of county buildings are in poor shape because over the years, in funding crises, it's very, very hard to replace that end of life equipment. Now, over on the right-hand side, you've got the American Society of Civil Engineers report card that is saying, that is rating our systems, our utility systems. D+ for energy, D+ for wastewater, D+ for stormwater, wastewater and stormwater being something that many counties are responsible for, and of course your customer on the energy side. And so the insufficiency of the grid is driving this need for resiliency. So when I say resiliency, it's the ability for critical county facilities to operate, say, on a microgrid, so that if the grid goes down, you're able to continue to deliver critical services like health and human services, mental health services, and public safety, and so on, even in these most challenging of circumstances. So yeah, again, a microgrid allows you to, if the grid goes down, allows you to keep operating, and is run by your solar, your battery, perhaps a generator, and those assets are orchestrated to serve the full or part of your facility. So and then the other piece of this is the challenge of compliance. If you're in charge of treating wastewater, you've got to meet, or stormwater, you've got to meet your MPDES federal permit with your effluent. And so, but treating that is very expensive, and again, aging infrastructure. So, the techniques that we're going to talk about, the financial strategy that we're going to talk about, is going to help you with your comply as well. So it's not just building, traditional facilities, offices, hospitals, clinics, public safety facilities, but it's these wastewater plants and energy systems as well. Okay, next slide. And all this is being done in an environment of increasing operating, well, like we can say operating and capital costs. So the first bullet, your commercial energy prices have increased 27% over the last 5 years, and even more in the West. I mean, this is a kind of budget risk that rivals, rising pension costs or things like that. I mean, this is uh, uh, just a hole in your, kind of a black hole in your budget. And to the extent that you can control these uh, um, these challenges, that you're going to have a much higher likelihood of success in overall county operations. So electricity is a big piece, outpacing inflation. It says starting 2022, that's probably a national figure, but certainly in California, it's been outpacing inflation for a long time, for decades. So, and then in terms of capital costs, inflation is averaging 6.6 annually in the US for construction related costs. And so the lesson there is that the longer you wait to do necessary upgrades, the more expensive it's going to be. And the graphic on the right illustrates that a project that would have cost $1 million 5 years ago is now requiring an investment of 1.3 million. So these are really, this is kind of the context that you're operating in. These are the big challenges: funding, the condition of your infrastructure, and the need for compliance at federal and state level, as well as in this environment of increasing capital costs. So that's the context. Those are the challenges. And now, what are we going to do about it? Next slide. So a comprehensive infrastructure modernization program can help you control those items that you can control. I mean, there's a lot in your environment that you can't control, like maybe Congress and the federal government. But what can you control? Well, you can control the state of your infrastructure and your energy costs. And so this is allowing you a comprehensive infrastructure modernization program can help bring some certainty to this breadth or the suite of issues. Next slide. Just a little bit about OPTERRA. We work exclusively with public agencies. So cities, counties, special districts, and I'll go into that more in the next slide. But basically, we build things that shrinks your energy costs and your operating costs. And the savings from those reduced costs capitalize the project. So, that is the basic business model that we're talking about here. So, in terms of our experience, we've been in business for 50 years. We've been doing projects of these type for public agencies. So we have that depth of over 9,000 projects across the country. And we have 300 employees, so a pretty deep bench. As Paula mentioned, our parent company is LS Power. They are a major owner of energy assets in the billions across the country, as you can see there. So next slide, please. Okay, who do we serve? As I started to say, cities, counties, special districts, any agency with an elected board. So education, K through 12, community colleges, universities, federal government, state government, special districts like water and wastewater districts, as well as healthcare districts. Most most states have legislation that facilitates these kinds of energy projects that help you reduce costs. Um, it is looked on as a public benefit to be able to reduce public agency costs that are supported by taxpayers. So the more efficient we can be in running all these different kinds of governmental entities, the better off the public is. And that is the reason for these streamlined procurement legislation that most states have. You can see a number of the customers here. There's Solano County, City of San Jose, or local ones. The electrification at the PDX at the Portland Airport of the rental facility. That one is popping out to me. BART, which is our major transit provider here in the Bay Area, as well as many others across the country there. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. I know we've done a lot in Broward County and so on. So those are just examples. But again, all governmental agencies, all local government agencies, public agencies. Okay, next slide. Okay, we take a very broad view of infrastructure. It's both what's inside the building and what's outside the building. So, and it's the energy you use as well as the energy you can generate. So some of the energy that you could generate: solar, cogeneration, geothermal, battery storage, and all those pieces can be combined together in a smart microgrid. And then the facilities themselves, like hospitals, office buildings, clinics, public safety facilities, plants for water and wastewater treatment, across the gamut. And it's distributed infrastructure like street lighting and other public lighting, camera and sensor networks, advanced metering and controls out there, across a geographic region, as well as EV charging. So, so we take a really broad view. Just gonna check my notes here. Yeah, so that's the gamut of the things that we look at when we start working with an agency. And the next slide. And then what is the benefit of bundling projects into programs? Now, when we start working with agencies, I think the thing we see the most is that agencies have done a lot of projects, smaller projects, piecemeal. And like, oh, we replaced the lighting in this building, or we replaced this piece of HVAC equipment. But it makes it very hard when you do take this piecemeal approach. It makes it very hard for your board of supervisors or the executive level in the organization to really see the benefits. The benefits are kind of invisible, but when you bundle a lot of this work into a larger program, you can measure and guarantee the financial results. You can really see the financial results. And partly that is because as OPTERRA, we guarantee the results, the energy savings. But it's also in the way you bring it to the board and justify it to the board. There's just a big benefit in bundling it into a larger bundle that can be justified from a financial perspective, as well as a greenhouse gas emissions perspective, like a climate perspective, if that is something that is important to the county. So let's see. Also, bundling is going to help you calculate that ROI. So you've got basically physical savings of electricity based on the newer technology that you can implement, and then you can look at it um, over both the short and the long term, and by um, a component of the project. So many of these projects would typically have maybe 8 or 10 different types of energy generation or energy savings. Um, uh, um, we call them measures. So you might do, a countywide, in all your county facilities, energy upgrade, which would have a very fast payback. But you might also have HVAC, heating, air conditioning, ventilation upgrades that have a very, very long payback. But by bundling them together, you can get a good average payback that is within the decision-making horizon of your board. Like, so if your overall program, once you average everything out, might have a payback, a break-even payback over 10 or 15 or 20 years would be common. You could also, when you have a bigger project, there's more types of incentives that you can attract and track. So that helps in putting together the funding plan for the program. And you've got economies of scale. Um, for one thing, again, we've talked about this at the beginning. Counties are being asked to do more with fewer people, less resources. Um, Working with us, you're able to we're kind of a force multiplier for your workforce. For a time, we can, basically double your facility staff, get these projects developed and implemented, and reduce the amount of operations and maintenance that have to be done on an ongoing basis. And so you're getting these both, I think you get both deployment efficiencies as well as employment efficiencies, getting the most out of everybody. And then because of the scale of these projects, we're really, for every project, we're able to put together a community engagement program. And this is just really part of our DNA and just very, very important to us. We have staff that will put together, and we tailor this to every agency, but for example, workforce development, internships for youth, introducing them to um, clean energy job opportunities, curriculum for the classroom, uh, public outreach. So we tailor all these different options to your specific needs so that the community engagements that we provide is in step with the goals that the county supervisors may have. So yeah, next slide. Let's talk about how we develop a project. So we really do this in 3 steps, or you could call it 4 steps, but um, the point to take away is that we're with you every step of the way, from concept to long-term operations and maintenance. So at the conceptual stage, we start with a fairly short feasibility study where we obtain your um, uh, energy records, from your local utility. We discuss the priorities with staff. We analyze the electricity bills and gas bills to see, and heating bills to see where are you spending the most money, what facilities are you spending the most money, because of course that's where you're going to be able to save the most. And then we present our findings, and present and discuss our findings. Is very iterative here. So we are presenting you with information while you are expressing your needs, and as we are gaining an understanding of your needs. If at a high level everything looks like there's a promising project, we'll move into the development stage. And this is where we prepare. We have a We're starting to put together a firm scope. We're putting together work packages. We do bid walks with subcontractors to get competitive bids. Um, and then we're calculating the savings for each energy measure. And so we're coming up with, a financial formula that works so that you're paying for the project out of the energy savings. And so it's a bit of an art into deciding exactly what scope goes into the final project. And of course, the county has the biggest say in that. And we can help guide with kind of the facts and figures and how to make a positive cash flow pro forma. And then comes implementation. Typically, a funding package and a implementation contract goes to the Board of Supervisors for approval, and then we move into implementation for however long that takes, and then typically we're going to have an ongoing operations and maintenance contract, particularly for the renewable energy components, batteries, and the solar and microgrids, just to make sure that they are operating and achieving the financial results over the long term as promised. So that's the implementation. Next slide, please. Okay, funding. Like many of the large projects that you've been involved in, funding comes from a variety of different, it's kind of cobbled together from a variety of different sources. You may have a bucket of capital improvement funds. We've been meaning to spend that money on replacing that cooling tower. So, that can get contributed to the project. There's, the tax exempt lease purchase option. For a smaller project, bonds typically for a larger project. We're often working side by side with your municipal financial advisor to have them kind of guide what is the most optimal funding. For a project like this, we're working furiously. We keep on top of all the grants and incentives and rebates that are available from your local utility, state grants, and currently at the federal level as well. There's been a little bit of a wrench thrown into things at the federal level, but a lot of those incentives are still in place. There's a timeline to the solar now, but a lot of those incentives are still in place, and we track very carefully the requirements in terms of the domestic content, foreign entity of concerns, and so we have relationships with our suppliers that make sure that we are procuring equipment that's going to qualify for those grants. Back to working alongside your municipal advisor, we'll often run a competitive bid process of 4 different funding sources to make sure that the public agency, the county, is getting the best possible financing options in front of them. Lower right, the PPAs, third-party ownership. This is not as popular as it once was, because now these investment tax credits can get paid directly to the county themselves. And so it makes the ownership model a lot more attractive. PPAs now, again, because interest rates are high, you've got a lot more transaction costs, and it just kind of adds to the project cost. I'm a big fan of the ownership model, because these counties, they take fiscal management really, really seriously, and they have good credit ratings. So you can your cost of money is good. So why not trade on your good name that is well earned when financing these projects? So, and then the savings that are generated over time go to make that loan payment up until it's paid off, and then all of the savings accrue to the county. So that's the funding model. So next slide, please. Okay, and that takes us to the Solano County. Did I have anybody from Solano able to join? They're in the middle of their board meeting right now, Tuesday morning.
Nobody from Solano has joined us.
Okay, okay. Well, I'll do my best here. I'm pretty familiar with this project, but Solano County. Let's move to the next slide. I'll tell you a little bit about the county. So Solano County is located in the San Francisco Bay Area, one of the 9 counties in that metropolitan region. And, it has the I-80 corridor running through it where most of the cities lie along that corridor. It's so between San Francisco and Sacramento, if you're familiar with that drive. It's about almost 1,000 square miles and almost 500,000 residents. It's really an interesting mix of rural and urban. There's a lot of agriculture, but one of the major drivers in the economy is the Traverse uh, Air Force Base. Got a lot of military, federal employees associated with that. It's a really diverse county. So, Vallejo used to be a naval shipyard building center in World War II, and so there's a lot of history, a lot of migration from the South occurred to these really excellent jobs in the shipyards around the World War II and post World War II years. So that's Solano County. Next slide, please. Okay, infrastructure challenges, wildfires. Yeah, it's wildfires, but not just wildfires. It's any kind of natural disasters really came on the county's radar in a kind of the 2019-2020 timeframe. There was the failing PG&E grid was sparking these wildfires. And so you had a combination of a fire with a heat event. So everybody had to have their air conditioning on. Meanwhile, PG&E is shutting down the grid. And so, it's a confluence of, these huge challenges that will really make affecting the most vulnerable of the population. So I had a conversation, back then with the then CAO, County Administrative Officer, Brigetta Corsello, and she was just really the power outages really brought home to her, hey, we're the backstop for the vulnerable populations. We have elderly, we have sick people who have to be in air conditioning. It's life-threatening if they're not. And when the power's out, we don't have a cooling center for them. And so that was really a big impetus behind this project, was to make the Fairfield Library into a cooling center for all the population to go, if they were in trouble from power outages. And it's not just these wildfires and PSPS events, but the county's vulnerable to earthquakes, and then to say nothing of man-made disasters. So it's this idea of resiliency and being able to deliver county services under all circumstances, these critical county services, that led to the scope that included these microgrids as a highlight. Next slide, please. The other big impetus was the rising PG&E rates. This slide shows it pretty dramatically, just over the course of 4 years, but you can go back 20 years and the graph, looks similar or even more dramatic. These rising energy costs are a real black hole for your budget. It's a real risk for the budget. but it is something that you can get your arms around and control by making sure that you have your facilities are up to date with the most with the best energy efficiency, and that you're generating as much of your own power as you can with solar, and that you're arbitraging the time of use rates with battery storage. Um, buy low, sell high, or use your battery stored electricity when those power rates are high. And there's quite a lot of savings that can be achieved in that way. So yeah, and because of all these wildfires, rates are just projected to keep going up. And there's the whole change in our economy too, with artificial intelligence and these big, data serving campuses, data server campuses that are using more and more electricity, and so that's creating a scarcity, which also leads to the risk of rising costs, electricity costs. So that was another big driver, is that just trying to get the county budget so that it's more predictable. So when you build stuff, you're going to shrink your power bill, and so you're really hedging against these rising electricity rates. Whereas you started by spending $4 million a year or $5 million a year. If you can shrink your consumption down so that you're only spending in hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, that's a big step forward. Okay, and so when I look at these projects, I feel like it's the most fiscally responsible thing that a board can do is implement these energy saving projects. Next slide, please. Okay, so the scope that we undertook in Solano County, these resilient microgrids, as part of a comprehensive energy program. This is a picture of the Fairfield Library. This is what Brigetta Corsello, the CAO, had in mind when she realized she really needed a centrally located cooling center for the county population. And so now when the power does go off, this facility, it islands from the grid, and it is powered by the solar panels that you see here. It's powered, and the energy is stored in the battery. There is a generator connected as well. And so there's hardware and software smarts to make up the microgrid so that it can run, a week or two, or even indefinitely with a reduced load to continue to provide the cooling services and other critical services out of this location. So I will mention, yeah, we have an ongoing maintenance contract. So these microgrids are now in the commissioning stage. We're just this close to be done with them. I'm always happy to arrange a tour for people of the 3 campuses, and the county is open to it too, to really, so you can get hands-on and really understand how these things work. We do have an ongoing, maintenance program where we're maintaining the panels, making sure that everything is operating as promised and is producing the economic benefits that were planned for. But also we'll do an exercise every year of, simulated or actual outage, and make sure that everybody understands how the switchover occurs. Even it happens automatically, but how the switchover occurs, and what to expect from the microgrid operation, and to troubleshoot in case there is any need. Okay, next slide. So the overall scope, we did the 3 microgrids with a total of 2.8 megawatts of solar, 7 megawatt hours of battery storage. So that's kind of the sexy part, the microgrids. That's at the library, as I just described, but also at the Beck campus and the Vallejo campus. So at the Beck campus, the critical services there are Health and Human Services. They have the sheriff's evidence, and they have the labs there. So that just cannot lose power. There's just too much at stake. And then they have IT, their IT servers. So those are kept. We'll keep those up, come rain or shine. Grid or no grid operating. We can operate all those buildings independently. And then the Vallejo campus, again, Health and Human Services there. There's clinics and the courts. And then there's the fueling station for county vehicles, and then the emergency communications tower. So again, you can't operate without those. Another savings that the county is gaining is that we went from, it used to be these buildings were all served with secondary power individually. But what we did is we put all the facilities, whether it's 4 or 5 or 6 meters, on a single primary loop. And so now PG&E only serves primary power. And so there's a big cost savings there because the primary power is more of it's just less expensive. But getting back to kind of the bundling concept that I mentioned before, we also replaced lighting throughout the county. So lighting in all the county facilities, from the administration facilities to the jails, juvenile detention, all the office buildings, clinics, Health and Human Services, and sheriffs, so on and on, but all those facilities. So those are all now LED lighting, top quality, and huge energy savings there that could be leveraged to pay for some of the more expensive things like the HVAC. We had 2 notice to proceeds with this project. They immediately wanted us to get started on replacing the HVAC at the Beck campus because I think that they had been just plagued by complaints. There might have been some OSHA concerns, where things just were the equipment was just so old, the workspaces were getting too hot, and they had to send people home. And that's not a very efficient way to run things. So that was like first order of business, was to jump on that and get that done. And then electric vehicle charging stations then throughout all of the, at all the county sites, essentially. So just to emphasize the benefits, keeping critical county operations going during grid outages, whether man-made or caused by natural disasters, reducing your utility expenditures and hedging that risk of rising utility rates. Sustainability goals is something that we really haven't talked a lot about here, but just as important as the fiscal goals in the fiscal stewardship in some counties is the climate goals. And then workforce development, a lot of local jobs were generated from this. And workforce development, we did a whole host of things. We judged in the science fair, the STEM fair. We had an intern that did a bunch of research in the county administrator's office, who's now a county employee. And then we even had our construction crews come in and spend a day with the kids in the juvenile detention facility and just talked about clean energy jobs and how to get into apprenticeship programs and provide those kids with a career path, ideas about career pathways forward. So that part is really exciting to me. Next slide, please. Lessons learned. I think this is the last slide, and then we'll move to questions. But identifying critical county operations that need to be bolstered by some of these resiliency techniques. That's something to identify very early on in the project. We always prioritize projects that generate savings. You know, one of the selling points of this approach to, the comprehensive um, infrastructure modernization programs is that they can be paid for um, with savings and efficiencies. So, we want to make sure that you're replacing those transformers, doing the things that have a fast payback, and bundling them with the other energy measures that may have a longer payback, like, cooling towers and, boiler replacements and that sort of thing. We do provide long-term maintenance if it's the desire of the agency we're working with. As part of the implementation contract, we want to make sure you're continuing to get that economic benefit through, the life of the project, 20, 25 years and beyond. Um, and we incorporate those costs in the overall financial pro forma when you're in the decision-making phase so that you understand how those play into it. I mean, they're really pretty minor, but I think very critical to making sure the economics are delivered as promised. I mean, this approach, it's really a financial strategy. When you get right down to it, I mean, you can look at it through the lens of construction and modernization, but it's also really a financial strategy, a smart financial strategy. Communicating and coordinating across county departments and all stakeholders. Yes, if you're in facilities, if you're in GSA, your customers are occupying all those buildings. And the most important thing is strong communications between, the GSA alongside OPTERRA, communicating with the stakeholders. Okay, there's going to be temporary parking here. This is going to be the new path of travel for the next 4 weeks or 6 weeks, and then it's going to change to this. So a lot of intricacies in planning so that employees are safe and comfortable in going to their jobs every day, and that county operations continue uninterrupted. Yeah, so minimizing disruption. Um, we wanted to consider throughout all that, part of all that is considering the labor and union workplace standards, and again, making sure that people are safe and comfortable while the work is being performed. And, typically a lot of the work is done at night or on off hours. Like, for example, we had, I think, about 6 major cutovers with PG&E, like, so power outages on these facilities planned so that we could switch them from the secondary power to the primary loop, to achieve those cost savings and reliability of the microgrid. But yeah, so lost my train of thought there a little bit. But so the point there is uh, this, again, the coordination. We've had to coordinate. I mean, it took us almost a year to plan the cutover at Vallejo because of the working hours of the clinics, the criticality of the nature of the services that they're providing, and the court's function. So, there's a lot of intricacies with the services that the county departments provide. And so planning the outages is a project unto itself. But I think in the end, the county was pretty pleased. There was just very, very little disruption. Yeah, and then just staying on top of the changing regulations and grant requirements as you go. Yeah, we've had a kind of changing landscape and the federal subsidies, particularly throughout the course of this project. So I think I'll just wrap it up there and open up the floor for questions. Paul, are you going to read me the questions, or?
Can definitely do that. First, I want to welcome Anthony. Thanks
Oh,
for
yay!
joining us, Anthony.
Hello,
Uh,
everyone. Really sorry, Paula and Kelly. We had a board meeting and had some stuff switch around. So we had individuals that were going to speak and then were not available. So it just became one of those things. But I hope the presentation went well. I definitely want to answer any questions that I can for the group. So I do apologize.
Well, better late than never, right? So glad you're here. Glad you're here. First question that we had in the chat was, do counties normally have to put out any funding up front for these projects?
Good question. It's a combination. So you can, if you have the funds, yes, you can contribute them to the project, but they can be entirely funded through these tax exempt lease purchases or bonds. The energy savings is treated by the banks like a like rate income for water and sewer. So the banks have worked with us enough through the decades. They know that we guarantee the savings, and so that you can get a very low interest rate. You know, it's like issuing water or sewer bonds. You can get a very low interest rate because the bonds are secured by the rates. In this case, the borrowed money is secured by the energy savings that will be achieved and that are guaranteed by OPTERRA. If you don't achieve those savings, we write the agency a check. We write the county a check. Does that answer that one?
I think it does. Anthony Grant, would you mind unmuting and asking the question you had regarding guaranteed savings?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Yeah, so I've heard you talk a couple of times, Kelly, and we've had some conversations with some other firms that sound like they do similar type of systems and enhancements to our buildings. But we've recently have gone through, it was one of our smaller, medium-sized buildings where we did a large LED lighting upgrade with the LLCs, so the network controllers, HVAC, we got switched from into variable speed and replaced the cooling tower as well as some boilers. Now we couldn't do a fuel change from gas to electric because it had penciling out somewhere between 15 and 20 years before we'd be payback. But what we're seeing is we're not seeing any actual dollars saved. We absolutely are seeing reduction in energy usage as a whole. But as I think you said several times, Kelly, in your presentation, you're seeing the expense on the energy continue to grow, and we're just seeing an offset. So, I mean, it's stayed flat expense wise, which is a win. Don't get me wrong, and I totally acknowledge that. But you speak about savings and that paying for it. If we had gone forward with one of the presentations we had, we wouldn't have actually had any savings, and we would have had. So I just want to know thoughts on this. Is there anything that just is our observation, and maybe we did something wrong? That's my concern, but I don't think we have. So that's kind of my question as a whole, is this is what we've encountered, and we have much larger buildings that have kind of been pushed pause on because we're not seeing that ROI or the actual dropping of expense. So just that's kind of where we're facing now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, not knowing the details, it's hard to generalize, but and the escalation environment that you're in with your utility. I mean, I can hear you saying, yeah, you're seeing that you're hedging against those rising utility costs, you know, if it's staying flat. But the dollar savings, I mean, I think when you look at when you put together your pro forma, your plan, your financial plan, um, you want to take a careful look at what the company you're working with is using for an escalation rate, and you want to make sure that that's conservative enough. Uh, um, you know, in PG&E territory, we have actual escalation rates 6, 7, 8%, but we tend to use the kind of a 4% or so escalation so that the savings that are going to be achieved are greater than kind of than was presented to the decision makers. So you're getting more savings really than was presented to the board. Now, depending on how high the actual escalation is, and compared to what you have in your financial plan, you know, that's where there may be some disconnect.
Yeah, it just is pushed. It's just politically, you know, you talk, and we're in a purple county, you know, so I'll put that out there as well. I know our those that are on the you know, the Democratic side of the aisle, for example, extremely supportive of this as a whole, and we got a lot of buy-in off of the Republican or the red side because of the savings. Now that the
Fiscal.
savings have not materialized, that's really has put a large challenge in getting, when you have a board that's split evenly, you need 11 votes if you've got 20 people on your board in order to make something go forward. And luckily, the most recent election has shifted that slightly, but still, we're right there, and it's a challenge. We want,
Yeah.
as a whole, me as the person that oversees our facilities team and helps support them, and the amount of labor and all that's been saved because things aren't in hand any longer, and there's labor savings, and that's what we're trying to talk about, not just straight energy savings. And we've gotten some traction, but it's just, I don't know, it just is our issue, and I want to know if anyone else is experiencing that. And you kept talking about guaranteed savings, and I was like, well, we were told the same thing, we didn't get any. So, but we did, like you said, hedge, and it stayed flat. So I recognize that's a win.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if I could just add, Kelly, yeah, in California, the cost of energy has just been climbing. So you do your best to try to predict the future, really. I mean, with all the factors that you have, and try to put an escalator in there that makes sense. But as you mentioned, and Kelly mentioned, that if it stays flat, then you're really, kind of fighting against time, right?
Right.
And then materials go up in cost, labor goes up in cost, and you could find yourself, not catching up. I think that's one of the hard parts in the performa when you're developing it, is what do we anticipate in California. I think everyone knew, especially after all the the fires that we had, and we all knew that PG&E was causing some of those fires, and so that's where it became well, there's a cost that's eventually going to get passed, and I think that was the key here for us, was to make sure that we kind of stabilize our energy costs moving forward. But yeah, it's a difficult thing to predict.
Well, I appreciate everybody considering that. I guess there's not anything other than this is the market we're in at this point, and hopefully the next time we go out for our aggregate electrical procurement, that we'll get better rates. I mean, that's ultimately what drove a lot of this up, was when we RFP'd everything, it came in way higher than even what the performer thought that it was going to. But all right.
Happy to dig into that in more detail with you too.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. Another question from the chat. Were any of the HVAC replacements going from gas-fired to electric?
We did not do conversions here. We do a lot of electrification conversions. But that was bringing the costs under control was more of a priority for the county. Certainly we're electrifying with the electric vehicle charging stations. So meeting state mandates for that with electrification. So, but that's a big driver for a lot of agencies, is electrification, giving yourself the chance to get off fossil fuels. And those priorities vary county to county. I mean, my personal opinion, natural gas is still a pretty clean fuel. Transition fuel, we'd love to get to hydrogen. That's at least a decade or two out.
Thank you. I think this is a good question to perhaps wrap up the hour. Which upgrades tend to generate the most cost savings?
I would say, lighting, solar. Batteries are expensive, but they have good cost savings associated with them. Transformers are a good one. That's just off the top of my head. It's going to vary depending on your utility, your rates, your rates. Anthony, what would be your?
I mean, I think that's exactly right. Kind of to the other person's point. For us, we had old equipment, and so when you compare the efficiencies from the old equipment to the newer equipment that was put in this project, they're huge. I mean, the technology has gotten so much more efficient. And so I think that that's something to consider as well, is that there are efficiencies, even if you are upgrading equipment in natural gas equipment. But I think the solar is a big one. Once the microgrid is fired up, you start generating your own electric. I mean, it really starts taking hold. The battery, and I think it's something to speak on about this. The technologies are constantly getting better, right? And so the efficiencies are getting better. The more energy you generate is getting better. So really, it's the infrastructure you're putting in now for tomorrow, right? And so that's one of these things that as the technology increases, I mean, I don't think it's gonna, be double or triple in the future, but it's steadily getting better. So once you get to the renewal, then you're generating even more and you have that infrastructure there. But just to the question, I think the solar is huge for us in California. In other states, it might not be that much of a balance, just because wintertime really drops off. I don't know if you guys can see, but it's pretty overcast now. So it's just one of those things that you're trying to weather. But in the summer, since we've had the huge heat waves, and cooling has been a big thing for us in cooling centers, so it's just transitioning that stuff over to there. So they generate a lot of power, but the use is, and I'm sure Kelly went over, was the criticality of it, right? And how it applies to emergencies. So I would say solar panels, the canopies have been great for us.
Yeah. And the operation, somebody brought this point up earlier too, but it's the operational savings and the,
Right.
you're no longer having to change. It can be 20 years now before you have to change your LED out.
Yeah, I mean,
So
light bulbs is a good. That's a small
maintenance.
one, but it's a big one. And it's a big maintenance factor. But as the technology went from, in the last 10 years, it's just been leaps and bounds when it comes to lighting. So that's kind of an example. But I don't know if solar panels are going to make those kind of jumps, but we're ready for them. So that's the good thing.
Anthony, did you have any other comments that you wanted to be sure and share with our attendees, since you didn't get a chance to speak earlier?
Yeah. I think my contact information was in the presentation. If anybody has any questions or like to reach out, sure, just go, shoot me an email. And we can, kind of go through some of the details. I know that this is, kind of topical right now, but, if you have any detailed questions, me and my team would love to help. This project has been a big move for the county. And after our that fire that we had, it was one of those ones where it was like we knew we had to start thinking about microgrids, thinking about our infrastructure and what that means, and then moreover our emergency response to that, and what resiliency and reliability look like for the county. We're a big county, a lot of square footage, a lot of constituents. They're pretty heavily involved. So it's just making sure that we're taking those steps for the 21st century, and then part of that is starting to find out what energy sources we have, where energy in the market is going. But yeah, we'll use this as a resource. If you have questions and want to reach out, I'm definitely available.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we ran a few minutes over today, but just want to thank everybody for joining us. As I said before, recording will be available. I will also share slides from this presentation as well. So thank you for joining us, and thank you to OPTERRA for a great presentation.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone.